In this letter, the Alter Rebbe is writing about a phenomenal idea about explaining the idea of tzedakah as it relates to making Hashem's name great. That's what we said. It makes Hashem's name great. What does that mean? So we're going to take a very long journey, which we started already, talking about the Garden of Eden, Gan Eden, the world to come. And an insight into this will give us a great insight into the whole structure of the universe and the effects of our mitzvahs in the world, etc. It's a very important, but it's a deep chapter. So what we discussed last week, or last time we had a class, was that Olam Haba, or Gan Eden as we call it, is primarily a concept of finally appreciating, understanding godliness, which means a human being, a physical person, cannot comprehend godliness. You know, like we said, someone would tell you a really good story, but in a language you wouldn't speak. You have no appreciation, understanding. It's like, I don't understand why people say it's so good, the story. To me, it didn't make any sense. The joke wasn't funny. The story made no sense. The math didn't add up because the language I don't speak. A human being in a physical body cannot speak the language of godliness in its unfiltered way. Therefore, we don't understand why it's so entertaining, why it's so exciting. It's like someone could tell you, come on, you didn't hear the story? It was fascinating. Yeah, but I don't speak Greek. I don't speak, Chinese. I don't understand a word that was said. So we have a life that we're living here with no appreciation of what the power of a mitzvah, the power of godliness. People talk, and I myself, a lot of times when we talk about someone passes away and they say, they're now under the wings of the Shekhinah. What does that mean to me? Wings of the Shekhinah. Who wants to be under the wings of the Shekhinah? What's going on there? It's like, obviously, we have no idea what that means, what that is. And therefore, to us, the glory of godliness, you're now under Hashem's revealed godliness. So what is that? I'd rather have like a very good, comfortable couch, something with some nice, fresh air, and maybe some good music. And the reality is that there's a world we can't understand. We don't appreciate it. It's like trying to give a child who doesn't understand, anything beyond like lollipops and give him some fancy sushi, which is spicy. I don't appreciate this. I don't understand why you like it. It's something out of our realm. So Gan Eden really means hasaga, understanding. Oh, now I understand. Suddenly it's beautiful. It makes sense. I appreciate it. I comprehend it. I experience it. It's the difference between almost, this is the metaphor used. It's like someone describing to you a delicious food versus you eating it. Someone describing the concept of music before you ever heard it. I don't know. I gave the example last week of a person finally having a chance, his whole life he lived on IV, and someone tells you know what? Now he could chew the food and swallow it. He goes, why would I want to do that? Well, he says, come on, it's so delicious and it's amazing. What, to take the food, grind it up in your mouth and swallow it? That's amazing? Because they don't understand how beautiful it could be to have a delicious meal, the right flavors and tastes. So Gan Eden is all about understanding. But in the physical body, we couldn't handle it. And the reason why we don't understand it is not as a punishment or a holdback. We can't physically continue living and understanding it. If we would experience this level of revelation and appreciate it, we'd have what's called Chayes HaNefesh. We'd pass away. We couldn't handle it. A physical person can't go on and live and have such revelation. So Hashem holds us when we're not in the physical body anymore. We're no longer limited to a physical space and a being, and therefore we can appreciate it and experience it. That's what we talked about last week. And we finished off last week that the truth is every single person's Gan Eden is based on their personal experience in life. If you did a lot of mitzvahs, you have a lot of Gan Eden. You did a small amount of mitzvahs, you have a small Gan Eden. You did big, amazing mitzvahs, your Gan Eden will be big and amazing. In other words, we're cooking for Shabbos. Whatever we prepare, that's what we're going to have. You sit and prepare for hours and hours, you have a very fancy dinner. You did a quick thing and make 2 peanut butter sandwiches, that's what you're eating for dinner. You decide what you're having in Gan Eden. It depends what you prepare. Peanut butter and jelly, that's what you got. You want something more? Work on it, prepare, plan. And that's what life's about. And that's why in this world we have all the cooking and the preparation, and the next world's all the rewards and enjoyment. That's how it works. It says the tears of regret that we'll feel, or the sense of regret that we'll feel after 120 years, is to realize I can no longer do a mitzvah. I can't, and now I see the value and I can't do it. That's one of the reasons we say we don't go into a cemetery without tzitzis hanging out, not to tease the people. Like now they finally realize what tzitzis is, and you're going to tease them. So we hire tzitzis not to make them uncomfortable, like to tease them. That's where we're coming from. Now we're going to explains something quite beautiful. And that is, we're going to take this now to a much deeper level by explaining what is the Kabbalistic name for Olam Haba or Gan Eden. The Kabbalistic term is Bina. We said in the very beginning of the chapter, I'm sorry? Understanding. Comprehension, exactly. We said in the beginning, with Yud, Hashem created Gan Eden, and with the Hey, he created the physical world. Mm-hmm. So we're going to first talk about the Yud now, which is going to be, we'll see, it starts with Chachma, but it's really appreciated in Bina. Even though Yud represents Chachma, you can't appreciate the Yud until you have Bina. You have an idea. The idea is not appreciated until you develop and understand it. Chachma is that flash, that idea. Bina is a development of the idea. So let's see this inside. We're on page Kuf Zayin, on the second line, third word. So we said that Hashem created the world to come with a Yud and the physical world with a Hey. We said, that's why Olam Haba, which is another term that we use loosely for Gan Eden, is referred to in the Zohar as Bina. Bina, comprehension, understanding. Oh, that's what we did. That's what I meant. That's what suddenly we can understand and appreciate the flavors, the music, the sound, the whole experience suddenly can be enjoyed. Now, where does this come from? We're going to go into quite a deep idea. Where does it come from, Bina? So we learned this a couple times. We'll go through it today a little bit deeper than usual. We've discussed a number of times the idea of Chachma, Bina, Das, the process, the Midas, etc. We're going to take it now a little bit deeper. The idea of the concept of Bina draws forth from a source. Bina is not on its own. Bina comes from a source called Chachma. Now, Chachma has different layers of Chachma. Everything in Chassidus has layers. It's always like that. Depends. You talk about Chachma in this world, Chachma in that world, Chachma within yourself, Chachma in Atzilus, Chachma as it refers to, a more global status. So what is it talking about here? It's talking about, Bina here is talking about Nimsheches and B'chines Chachma Ilah, Ches Ayin is Chachma Ilah, Shu Moked HaAskala v'Hasaga. It is the source of all understanding and comprehension. That means everything we understand in life comes from something that came deep inside of us. We had a flash of insight. We had a complex situation and suddenly have an idea how to solve the problem. Now that idea has to be developed. It's not like I have the idea and it's done. Have the idea and now you got to go in second. Okay, I got to figure out how to apply it. So in other words, Chachma is from deep within our inner soul, our inner self, flashes or tiny sparks that come. And if we tap into it, like any seed that's planted in the ground, it's a tiny seed, but if you tap into it right and water it and you get the right amount of sun, next thing you know, you have a beautiful oak tree. So the Bina is a development of that which came from its source, which is Chachma. V'ukadmus haseichel. What is Chachma? It is the earliest stages of intellect. Kedim shebo leklal gilui hasaga v'havana. It's before it comes into a place where it can be understood. You see, we have a world of Chachma options or reality going on inside of us. It's our deepest core. We have all this potential, but we can't tap into it because those sparks aren't coming out. The sparks are there in potential, but not able to be tapped into. I guess in a way, it's not much different than a rock that is a flintstone. You hit it, it has sparks, and then you get that spark. Now, first of all, the sparks are always there. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the spark come out. The sparks are, again, not in existing. It's called a hidden. It's called something which Helam She'eni is hidden. Let's say in general by something which is hidden inside of, let's say, a coal or a source of fire. There's two types. There's a coal which has cool on the outside, but the inside is still boiling hot. And if you blow it, it will glow again. That's called something which is hidden, but it's there. There's fire inside. Then you have a stone which can be hit against another stone and give a spark. That's also there, the spark, but it's not found inside of it. It's hidden and it doesn't exist inside. It only exists when you hit the rock, meaning the spark doesn't sit inside. And the difference is if you put the item in water for a month, the coal will cease to function because there's actually something there that can be extinguished. The hidden spark inside of a stone is not really there. It's there in potential, only when you strike it. Therefore, you could soak it in water for a month. You're not going to extinguish it because it's not there to be extinguished. But on the other hand, it's not really there. It only comes out when you strike it. The soul has chachma inside of it that's constantly come out of sparks. Now that spark comes out, you have a very short window to catch the fire to start. You have to have the right type of soft wood or a little straw or something to catch that fire. If you don't, it goes nowhere. The chachma, you have to tap into it. That could burst into a giant burning and flaming fire. That's bina. So the chachma is always there, but you can't see it. The bina allows that when that chachma comes forth, you can tap into it, develop it, and get this bright idea, the development of it, whether it's a theory of relativity or a theory of gravity or science or any ideas that are profound ideas and innovative, understandings, that someone can give you a nucleus of it, and then you can spend a year studying it. I thought you had it. Yeah, but the details take time to unpack. That's bina. So it's only that while it's in its source, it can't be seen and it can't be found. It's completely concealed. Rak, and there's a very interesting expression now from the Alter Rebbe here. He says, Rak shema'at mizir sham mizir sham. It's a tiny bit of it. Mizir means a little bit. Sham is there. A small little bit, a small little bit. He says it twice. And the reason why he says it twice is he explains something fascinating. I don't know whether this is an explanation of the Rebbe or where it's from. He says when something comes down from a higher place, there's two types of, let's call it symptom, contractions, minimizations. You want to minimize it. You have, for an example, electricity coming from the city, and it comes into your house. If you wouldn't have outside some sort of box that modifies it, it would come into your house and blow apart your computer. So you have two things. One is that it modifies it to a smaller state. That's the first zir it says here. The second one is it modifies that you can receive it. It understands the need of each particular recipient. So when Chachma comes down from its source, or the idea of Chachma comes from its source, first of all, it's minimized before it comes to Bina, and then it's modified, not in its content, but in the way it's going to be received, that each person can understand that Chachma. Therefore, it's a very minimized amount that came from its source. So when you have Chachma come down, you're not getting the full energy, you're getting it minimized, but it's staying true to itself. There are certain times when you get something, it can come, for example, a light through a colored glass, or come through some sort of system that's murky, and the water will come through dirty. Here you're getting the original unchanged, unmodified from its content, just much less. There are times that we get something changed also, which is a different type of contraction or tzimtzum. Here we're talking about the Chachma, light comes in, the same exact Chachma, except much smaller and much simpler. No difference than a teacher would take an idea and he wants to teach a math idea to a student, and I'll give a metaphor with apples. It's talking about 2 + 2, and it's the same exact idea. It's 2 + 2, nothing changed, except now I could relate to it because a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old doesn't understand numbers on its own abstract. He has to see apples. You have 2 apples plus 2 apples. You have 4 apples. It's the same idea, same logic, same math, but it's modified to the child can understand. That's the Chachma coming into Bina. So he says this level, again, we're talking here about coming now from the source of Gan Eden into Gan Eden. That's what we're describing here. The source of Gan Eden is Chachma. Gan Eden itself, as we'll see in a moment, is the Bina. And we're going to explain that a bit more in just a second. Rak shema'at mizir sham, zir sham, only a small amount is there. Shoifeya, it flows, v'nimshach misham, it flows from there. Where's there? It is its source, it's Chachma. Lebchinas Bina. It comes into the world, the level of Bina, where it could be understood. And that's what Gan Eden is. Gan Eden is a world where you have this higher level of godliness that you could enjoy it. It's a portion size. They have in the kitchen, 250 pounds of meat, but they give you, 6 ounces. Why? They prepared it just the right way you could serve it. They give you the whole thing, you couldn't eat it. They give you a small amount that fits onto your plate. This is exactly the source, gave you a small amount, just like you'd enjoy. Lahavin or lahaskil, seichel hanelem, to try and understand that hidden seichel, meaning that chachma. V'lachein nikra, now we know why, we're going to explain now, why is chachma called the dat? We have the yud, the yud is every letter in the aleph beis, as we'll go down to that in a little bit more depth. Every letter in the aleph beis is particular. There's 22 letters. These are all godly inspired in their shape. They're godly inspired in their sounds, in their function, and not just godly inspired, they're actually a reflection of some revelation. So these letters actually tell you a lot about what light is there by looking at the letter. If you look at let's say 4 cups. 1 cup has milk, and 1 cup has soda, and 1 cup has oil. So you could right away say, okay, this came from an olive, this came from a cow, and this came from a factory that makes drinks. So you'll understand by looking at something, its source. The letters tell you who they are, what the source is. The shape of the letter is very particular. The yud in the Torah, the yud is a dot, but the dot has a little line on the very front of it going up, and in the back of it going down. So it doesn't look like a circle or a dot. If you look at the Torah, it actually has, its shape would be, this is the Yud, and it has, looking this way, in the front of it, a kaitz coming up like a thorn, in the bottom here, a thorn, and that's what the Yud is, a dot with a thorn on top, a thorn on bottom, or not a crown, a thorn. It's called a kaitz, like a little stick. Those are all particular. It starts off as a dot because the dot represents the earliest stage of an idea, like putting a pen on the paper and starting to draw. That first dot represents an unexpressed, it's not unpacked light, no different than a seed, a tiny seed that doesn't have any expression. It's not like if you cut the seed in half, you're going to see tiny little trees or apples inside of it. It's going to be a seed that nothing there. Even with a high-powered microscope, nothing is there, but it's all there. But that dot represents unexpressed source. It's an absolute source, higher than expression. Then it has a dot on top connecting it to higher levels, a dot below connecting to lower levels, but the thing itself was a dot. Now we understand why Chachma is called in the Zohar, why it's referred to as a dot. Let's see this inside. It's not just called a dot, it's called a dot in the chamber. The chamber is Bina. And this is actually a very interesting idea. The chamber is called Bina. So imagine this whole room is a chamber, even though Bina is not a room, it's a concept. And there's one dot. That dot is the nucleus which fills up the entire chamber. So even when the Chachma comes down and is filtered into the world of Bina, there's still that nucleus that's there. It's not like we're now disconnected. Chachma is back there. Bina is here. And we are a cause and effect. We are Chachma unpacked. Therefore, inside Chachma remains always that little dot, but at the same time, it's a dot. So the dot of Chachma represents, the dot in a chamber represents Chachma and Bina. It's like imagine the tree that is standing. Actually, I just went to my kids to Sequoia National Park, and we're standing next to these trees that are like, the biggest tree we went to was 109 feet around. It's unbelievable how big the base is. And you think about it, these trees are called to be 6,000, 3,000, 4,000, 2,000, whatever years old they are. Let's say a 3,000-year-old tree. It started off like a tiny, tiny seed in the ground, and it came to this giant thing. So it's the idea of the Chachma is that little power, that seed, that's inside the entire tree. You think the trees, that's own invention, it's all Chachma, but it's Chachma unpacked, the seed's unpacked, and now expresses of everything you're going to find in the tree was there. You're never going to have, let's say, a tree that plants apples because you watered it so much, now it gives forth grapes. It's not possible because it cannot be only what was found within the seed in its function, type of leaves that it has, type of bark that it has, how it grows, how the roots grow. It's all predetermined inside the seed. It's just not unpacked. So Bina is that big chamber which has a dot of Chachma inside of it. And that is Gan Eden. Gan Eden is this giant chamber of godliness revealed, which comes from a revelation of Chachma. Okay. V'zuhi tumunas shel Yud shel Shem Havaya Baruch Hu. And that's the shape of the letter Yud. The shape of the letter Yud, as we'll see, every single letter in the alphabet, there's a lot of discussion, which I think is a good discussion to have, not today, I'm not an expert in the field, but with somebody who really have a discussion about the history of the Hebrew letters. When I say Hebrew letters, I mean the original Torah letters, Ksav Asher, letters in the Torah. Why is it fascinating? Because according to all historians, those letters come about at first in times of the Second Temple era. The letters before that, they had Old Hebrew, which I forget the terminology, there's a word for it, what they're called. Those letters are like old ancient Hebrew. And we don't find anywhere before that the letters that were modern, how we see the Torah written today. Everything we find is these old, before the first temple, or first temple and before, you don't find anywhere the letters of the Torah that we see it today. And there's a whole discussion, did these letters exist before? And according to Torah's Chassidus, according to many authorities in Halacha and Torah, these are the original letters that God gave the Torah in. What happened to it? A lot of opinions. I can tell you some that I heard. One is that after the sin of the golden calf, Hashem hid it from the Jewish people. They shouldn't have it until it came back much later. Another opinion I heard is that it was only used for Torahs, not for anything else, so it wasn't allowed to be used. Different theories. But I remember when I was once listening to a class by, I forget the guy's name right now, one of the experts in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and a religious rabbi, and he was saying how these letters didn't exist before the Second Temple. These letters didn't exist. The modern day, the letters that we have today didn't exist. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We have so much written about the source. Hashem created the world with the Yud and how it was in the Ten Commandments, the shapes. So he didn't really have an answer for what I was satisfactory. So I did some research with calling different rabbis who were experts, Shlomo Yaffe and others, and he explained to me, there's no question about it, the original Torah, the original letters were the shape we see today in the Torah. It's just that there's various theories what happened during like a 1,500 year stretch. Why didn't we see them anywhere? Why is it not found anywhere and then they reappear? So just as a side note, very interesting, but no question about it, according to the Torah understanding that we have, these are the original letters and shapes, and whatever we see beyond that needs to be understood. But again,
you cannot say that Aramaic is the old Hebrew.
Aramaic is not the Hebrew. Aramaic is like Ladino. It's a mixture of like a old Babylonian language together with Hebrew mixed together. It's like certain languages, like Ladino is Yiddish and like Spanish mixed together. Aramaic is not. It's not purely Babylonian language, and it's not the Hebrew. It's like a hybrid of the two languages. It's what?
Wow, Babylonian.
Yeah, it's a Babylonian language. That's what they spoke then. That was like English. Everyone spoke after the first temple was destroyed. Everybody went to the Babylonians, took the temple, took over Israel, and that's the language everyone spoke then for a long time. All the things that were written for people to understand at large were written in Babylonian and language that everyone should understand, or Aramaic, as we call it today. I'm only mentioning this thing about the letters because a lot of times you'll hear this, and then you'll read somewhere else where it says that these letters were not around before the Second Temple. It's like, 1 second. I thought this is the letters of the Torah. They are. And it's like I said, it's a good discussion to look into. I'm just not the expert on the field. But there's definitely a fascinating topic. But this is the original letters. So, and each one of the shapes are critical in its shape, like the Yud, for an example. Okay. This is the shape of the Yud, the picture of the Yud of God's name Havaya. So Hashem's name Yud Kei Vav Kei has a Yud, a Hey, a Vav, and a Hey. And to remember, it's important to remember now, the Yud is Chachma, the first Hey is Bina, the Vav is the 6 Midas, which is Chesed, Bina, etc. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes, etc. And the second Hey, the last letter, is Malchus, which is speech. Very important, because when we speak, a lot of times we think when we say Yud and Hey, referring to the first Yud and the immediate Hey afterwards. We're not. We're talking about the first Yud and then the last letter. It's the first and last letter, the Hey, which represents Malchus. And we're going to discuss that in a moment. Whoa, that's a huge jump. Usually when we go from Chachma to Bina, then to Midas, and then all the way down to Malchus. And we'll see in a moment that's not how it works in the creation of the world. And we'll see that in a moment. And that's going to be a lot of the focus of this chapter. Okay. V'nikra Eden. Now, what is this letter? This concept is called Eden. So I want to explain what this means. There's something called Gan Eden. Gan Eden is called the Garden of Eden. The truth is, it's a misrepresentation of what's really there. There's not a place called Gan Eden. There's a place called Gan. And there's a place called Eden. Now I know I went this summer to Budapest. There's not a place called Budapest. There's a city called Buda. And there's a city called Pest. And together it's called Budapest. There's a place called Gan. And there's a place, again, place is not physical place. There's a concept, a place and concept, or it's a real place, but it's not physical. There's a spiritual place. That's the word. There's a spiritual place called Gan. There's a spiritual place called Eden. Eden is the much higher place. That's the source. No human being can be there. No one's ever been there. No one could be there. A human being can't survive there. The level that's like the Chachma. Eden is the Chachma. From Eden runs a river to a place called Gan. That's where Adam and Eve were. They were in the Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. It's the Garden of Eden. Eden is the place. Gan is the garden of it, if you want to give that translation. So there's a river that runs, so to speak, from Eden to the garden. And it's called the Hashkei Sagan, to give life to the garden. And this is what we talk about Gan Eden. Gan Eden is that package of the God and Eden together. Now, Chachma is the Eden part, and that no one can function, no one can be there. Gan is the Bina part. That's where our souls are going to be. That's where our souls are. That's where souls are. Although many souls have passed away, are right now. All those unfortunately murdered are right now in the Garden of Eden. They're in the place called Gan. This place, Gan, is when you feel and experience the truth of godliness, but it's the way you could relate to it, not in the Chachma form. Chachma from Gan, Chachma from Eden, so to speak, shines, gives light, comes forth, flows into this world called Gan, and that's what the life is there. So what's Gan Eden? It's the Garden of Eden, where the souls of that lived or that will live are basking in the open, understandable, relatable light and energy and beauty of godliness. So that's the Chachma and the Bina concept of the Garden of Eden, if that's clear.
Can we parallel saying that Moshe reached Eden? Gan, Moshe Rabbeinu.
Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu that you're not able to see me and live. It says, referring to Eden. It says, no one could see it except God. It is the absolute, it's a pasuk in Isaiah where he describes, it's an area that can't be seen by any human being, because if you see it, you can't continue to exist. And we're not even talking about a human being in the body. We're talking about, period, you can't see it. It's something which is above. We can't, human beings can't experience that. Are there certain tzaddikim that get there? I don't know. Could be.
What about Eliyahu?
Again, these are people that went to the Garden of Eden.
Exactly.
So they went up to Gan.
Sure.
They probably went up to Gan Eden. Again, I don't know. I'm not an expert on the address locations of all these places, but I thank God I've not been there recently. Yeah, I have the email address if you want. That's it. It's gan@eden.org. But that's the bottom line. That's that's the idea of what Gan Eden is. So it's a Chachma and the Bina. In other words, what comes out of all this so far? That Gan Eden is really an experience, as we call the Gan Eden, as the package itself. Gan Eden, it's the experience of finally getting to hear the music, starting to enjoy the flavors, experience what is godliness. Why is it so good? It says, Ta'amu u'ukatev Hashem, taste, and you will see God is good. Okay, so on a simple level, we mean, you know what, let's sing a niggin, sit and daven, put on tefillin, light Shabbos candles, go to shul, and you'll see that life is meaningful and rich and good. That's a simple level. On a deeper level is that when Mashiach comes, we'll all experience it. But until then, you go to the Garden of Eden, you can actually experience an unbelievable, something that our minds can't wrap around today. There's no way. It's like trying to explain to a blind man colors or a deaf person music. It's not possible to give it over because it's not the world that we live in. We don't live in that world. It's absolutely inaccessible to us. So that Gan Eden, so it says, go back inside again, the Nikra Eden, it's called Eden. We're talking now this higher level of Chachma. Asher Olav Nemar, this is what Isaiah said, Ayin Leirasa, no one could see it. And now we're coming into the beautiful new discussion here, which we're going to now, this world. We have a question, really. What's the question? We say that we go, as we'll see right now, we go from the Yud to the Hey. Everything in this world goes through a process. There's a rule, they say, you want to come to this country, you have to go through the immigration. Don't come in illegally. Come in properly. Come in like you should. We'll try and skip everything. Okay, now I'm here, but make me a citizen. Let's go through the system together properly. So you have Chachma, then you have Bina, then you have Das, then you have Chesed and Gevur and Tiferes, Netzach, Peid, Yesod, and finally Malchus. What's Malchus? Malchus is speech. The ability and the concept of speaking I share now. I had intellectual feelings, I had emotional feelings, intellectual thoughts and emotional feelings. I had all different expressions of my soul, a lively bubbling. And now I go and I say it. This is the final product, the lowest level, because in the words, really, they're flat, they're just words, but they're powered by intellect, powered by emotion. They come out, but they're called, in Chassidus, they're called the stones. Why are they called the stones? Because a word is just that. It's just pieces of bricks that you can build a house with, you can build something, but it doesn't have a living existence beyond. In intellect, it grows and grows and thinks. In emotion, it grows and grows and thinks. Once I say it, what I said, the words came out. That's it. It's the final package. It's just, or another way to say it is, everything else was done in a very spiritual way. This is physical movements at the lips. It is the bottom of the totem pole. It's the bottom of the barrel. It's the final expression, which doesn't have the power of thought, the power of emotions. It's just expressing that which was inside, almost like a pipe that is just now just being the way to let the water flow or the air conditioning come through. You're just a pipe. You're just a vehicle. You're just a medium. So Malchus is associated, that's Dibur. And it's actually very nice to talk about it now because Rosh Hashanah is all about Malchus, and that's what all of my Marim are about. In a month now, I want to blow a shofar. I'll bring it in a minute. I knew I left something in the office. I left the shofar there on the table. So the bottom line is Malchus is the very bottom. So how do we go from the very top of the Yud to the very end? What happened to progress step by step? First go to Bina, Das, etc. So he says, "V'nikra Abba Yisod Brata." There's a famous concept which comes from the idea of a mitzvah of a parent to have a child, that you have to have a son and a daughter. So it says the father is the foundation. The father creates the daughter. And in general, this talks about also a very cool idea, otherwise, not here, but the special relationship with a father and a daughter, different than a mother and a daughter. There's a relationship with a father and daughter has, unique, which is a separate discussion, but also on the same topic. But it says the father creates the daughter. What does that mean? That Chachma, we know that father and mother represent Chachma and Bina. Brata is Malchus, is the final stage of Malchus, that which is expressed. So the question is, what does this mean? And now he's going to go with Alter Rebbe we'll take a few minutes to start, into a whole discussion now, understanding the letters of the Aleph base and a phenomenal relationship that our soul has with the letters. And we'll start with that today. Excuse me. Pirish. This is a phenomenal idea. This is something, by the way, you could sit and argue about later how to understand this. It's interesting. The expression, the creation of the words the letters that you speak that come out from the 5 expressions of the mouth. We spoke about this many times, but just to recap real briefly, there's 22 letters of the Aleph base. Every letter comes from another one of 5 points of the mouth. The mouth has the lips, the teeth, the palate, the tongue, and the throat. Every letter comes, the most external one, the Alter Rebbe takes that one here. We think he chooses this because the most external is what's called bum, or bumf, how you want to call it. What's that? Beis, Vav, Mem, Pei. Beis, Vav, Mem, Pei come from the lips. You have things that come from the teeth. You have things that come from the tongue and the palate. Alamed, Ches, Hey, you have a Tzadik, whatever you want. You have all different letters. And there's actually all 5 are hinted by the 5 letters that have final letters. There are 5 letters in the Aleph base that have a final letter. The final Mem, final Nun, final Tzadik, final Pei, final Chaf. It's called Mansepach. Mansepach represents the 5 different ways that your mouth expresses something. He's going to say something fascinating here. These expressions of the lips or the teeth or the palate are a very, very unique relationship to the depth of your soul. What is that? When a person speaks in general, you have 2 parts of the speech. You have the thought that's in the speech. Let's say I want to tell you that 2 + 2 is 4. That's the information. And then it's how it actually gets cut and articulated from my mouth and my lips and my talking. It's 2 separate things. A person can make sounds and not necessarily speak with seichel. A person can have seichel, not make sounds. So you have, for an example, parts of our body that are natural. What is that? Digesting your food. You don't have to get up in the morning and think, okay, I got to work on adjusting the food today. Okay, food, grab it. Okay, grab it. Okay, pull up, grab it. You missed the piece, grab it. You don't get involved. Why? It's all in a subconscious function. No difference than a cow who says moo. The cow doesn't have to articulate how he's going to say moo. It's a natural. Cows and dogs bark. They don't have to. It's like a baby's cry. A baby cry. A baby doesn't have to articulate. When a baby's crying, it's not a function of intellect. There's emotion and intellect behind it. I wish I could tell you how much I'm schwitzing, or I'm hot, or I'm hungry, or I'm tired, but all it comes out as a cry because I'm articulated. It's just a cry. Then you have parts of our bodies that are very much articulated clearly and done with the understanding. I want to take my hand and pick up this cup. I can explain to you how I'm doing it. I extend my hand and I can put my fingers around the cup. I squeeze it a little bit. I lift, not too much to squeeze the coffee, the spritz into the air, but just enough that, okay. That, I did it so many times with muscle memory, I don't have to think anymore. It's like driving a car, type with a typewriter. But in the earliest stages, I had to focus, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, learn how to do this. That means I can explain to you what I'm doing, even though I don't have to think while I'm doing it because I did it so many times. Means if I can explain it, it means I know what I'm doing and it comes from my brains. Then there are things which are not subconscious and not intellectual, or even though the muscle memory repeated, not something which I'm guiding and I can explain it. The sounds you make, think to yourself like this. You're making the same letters, Beis, Mem, Pei, Vav. Oh, sorry, not Vav is the other one. Sorry. Beis, Mem, and Pei. It's the ooze. It's the ooze. Okay. Beis, Mem, Pei. Boom. When you say those letters, are you thinking that I got to take my lips and squeeze them together to make the sound? There was never a point in your life that you had to do that. There was never a point as a 2-year-old that you said, okay, to walk, I got to use my feet, I can explain it. Try and explain to me right now, what do you do to make the bass and the pe and the meh sound? And how do you articulate what's a bet and what's a meh? Tell me differently. What do you do differently when you make a bet and a meh sound? Or a pe and a meh and a bet? And furthermore, if you want to make it with a kametz, I want to make it come out not ah but ah. It's going to be bump, 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 bump. All these things are, on one hand, they're intellectual because they're intellectual. On the other hand, they're not subconscious like digesting food. They're not just repeated like muscle memory because you did it so many times. Because the first time you did something muscle memory, you know what you're doing. And today I can explain it still. I just don't have to think anymore. It's done so many times. So he says like this. This is the idea what he wants to bring out here. We'll go into this much more in depth next week. The letters that you use, just the parts of your mouth you use to express letters, the sounds of the letters, not the information, the sounds are absolutely deeply connected to the essence of your soul, and they bypass completely. And the key here is they bypass. They don't have to go through the process of everything else. Not because of subconscious, like the digesting of food or the regulating your temperature of your blood that you're not involved with. They have another guy in the department in the back office in Omaha, Nebraska. He's in charge of all monitoring blood temperature levels. This is you. You are speaking, but you don't have to go and articulate it because your brain is directly, even from before the brain, from the source of your seichel, the chachma is already managing lip movements and telling your lips how to move. And therefore, you don't have to concentrate how to make a bit and a miss sound. And that's why we can't explain it. If I try and sit here and explain to you, okay, to make the ch sound or the gus sound or the lus sound, I don't know. I could try and think about it and try and say what I did, why I came out differently, but I never paid attention to it. And there never was a point in my life I tried to. There never was a point in my life that I said, okay, I'm learning how to walk, right foot, left foot, or it just came when you were old enough to speak and your body was able to mature enough to transmit from the source of seichel into function that it took over and bypassed all your communication systems. We're going to find something fascinating. Letters have something that skips the entire line. And that is the way that you move your lips, your tongue, and your teeth, and your palate to speak did not go through the regular process of everything else you do. Every single thing you do otherwise, even if you did it many times and got to the point of muscle memory, there has to be a point in your life where you're playing piano. You have to go through the stage of doing it, and now you can afterwards explain what you're doing. You can explain it. You can't explain what you're doing to make the bays and the mem sound, especially those two, and the pay. I don't know. I think when you push harder, boom, and then we go boom, and you go boom. You know, stand in front of a mirror and do it. So that's what the Alter Rebbe is saying here. So this is the key here. He needs habas oisa dibra yitzes mehem atzas apeh. I'm just going to do this first line here. We'll go with the rest next week. Einon davar muskel. On one hand, it's not an intellectual process where you're thinking how to cut and articulate the words out of your lips. And it's also not something which is natural, like digesting food or other things that we do, that you don't have to, it happens on its own, like a baby crying. Or, for example, a grunting sound. No one has to tell you how to kvetch. We make that sound. That is not trained. That is, I am kvetching. But that's again called natural. There are natural sounds we can make, but those are natural. Those are not intellectual. Speaking is intellectual. It's something incredibly unique about it. No other creature in the world can do it. Even when an animal could imitate sounds, it's just creating alternatively those sounds. They're not necessarily when a parrot is speaking. It's not using the same 5 things that we use. It doesn't have the same lips and a palate and a thing. You might see his mouth open and he makes the guttural sounds. How? You know what? Anyone could train themselves to do that with the unnatural way. Like what's it called? A guy that does a puppet. What's it called? A ventriloquist. A ventriloquist. What does he do? He uses an alternative way to speak. He's not using that, by the way, is unusual. There, he's not usually natural. There, he's going off the style of speaking, and he's doing something unusual. He learns without moving his mouth or his lips or his tongue to modify. A person can do that. People can make, there's something common or popular called beatboxing. You can do a lot of different things with your mouth, but that's not the 5 articulate sounds of the letters of the Torah. And that's what we're going to go into next week to understand. And the key reason we're going there is we want to explain, again, the theme we're going with here is we want to explain a connection between the highest level and the lowest level, between Hashem's function, so to speak, or godly functions, and our actions, and how our actions are intricately related to the highest level. That's going to be the flow of this chapter. Very important that the connection, the correlation between the highest levels and the lowest levels.
So I'm wondering how if every language has a little bit different way of pronouncing the same sound. That's an accent. How does that affect when you're trying to speak, let's say, Hebrew, and you have an accent or a different language?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I can guess something, but I don't know. It's actually a good question. How do we apply this to the fact that different languages have different sounds that we use? There are languages that don't have the sounds of the Hebrew letters. It's a different guttural sounds or different, that's a good question. I don't know how that works. That's something actually I'll try to look into. It's a good question. How do we understand this in application? Do we say that they're manufacturing sounds? Because these 22 letters that make these 5 sounds are related directly to the Lashon Kodesh, the holy tongue, the Torah. There could be other sounds, but I don't know how to apply that to this discussion. Let me look into it. It's actually a very good question to understand what's the perspective on other languages and when they have, especially other sounds.
It's like my dog says ow when he wants to go out. He says ow, wow. I mean, he's mimicking what I taught him to do, but he's not speaking either.
Right.
So, we have a different accent?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. I imagine that it's, again, different ways that we could train our mouth to do things that become second nature. Or is it another direct from the soul? I don't know.
And some people are much better at it than others.
Yeah. Like you can go back and also the discussion of intelligent children who can speak and articulate. You have people who can articulate and don't have information to share. And then you have people, which is very common, who have a lot of information to share but can't articulate it.
Yeah.
You have Rabbi Elkanah, blessed memory. He had a tremendous speech impediment. It took me time to learn how to listen to his classes. He was the most brilliant man in today's world, I'm sure in the religious world, and clearly the most greatest scholars, and he could not speak clearly. I have an uncle who has a tremendous knowledge, and he has a severe speech impediment. It's not uncommon that they come together, that people who are very strongly gifted intellectually in the mind have a challenge in mouth, from the lips. But it's an interesting discussion. But that just tells you one thing, that there's a disconnect or 2 different tracks of the intellect and the emotion behind the words and the words being said. You could have meaningless words. A person could repeat words completely. I heard someone say something, I should repeat it. There's no meaning, or I could be lying or being dishonest. And the words have no meaning or value, certainly not in truth, and yet they're exactly sharply enunciated, which means the path that we use to express sounds of words and the path that we use to express intellect and emotion are 2 different tracks. Happens to be that they need one another. So the intellect needs the mouth to be able to properly express the thought.
And what about people who can express themselves very well in writing, but not in speech and vice versa?
Right.
People who
the way you study, people are very well photographic.
How you remember stuff, that's another thing. How you audio, visual, no question about it. Writing stuff down helps your memory tremendously. When you write something down, take notes, even if you never look at them. There's a famous concept. I saw this in the mind of the Rebbe Rashab, that both writing and speaking with your mouth do a tremendous amount of drawing from deep inside your soul further. That's why a person could be emotional about something, not cry. He's not talking, they cry. What happens? It pulls. Same thing could be someone who has an idea, and as they talk about it, the idea gets better and better. They figure it out. Talking draws, same thing writing. When you write something, it draws, I'm not sure how it works emotionally, I never read about that, but intellectually, it draws out deep intellectual abilities that you wouldn't have if you wouldn't write. So it definitely opens up another, I don't know if it's a connector or a resource.
I mean, the whole concept is fascinating. I speak 4 languages, but I cannot spell in any of them. I'm very serious. I have absolutely there's a disconnect, and if I want to be creative, I cannot spell at all. It's like that.
Interesting.
But other times it's okay. It's really crazy. I used to work with kids, who had learning issues, so I'm always fascinated by the whole thing of language and.
Yeah, and you see it very interesting. There's a friend of ours we have who has a tremendous ability to explain, understand, and write things, but he has a severe stutter that he can't speak. He can't have a conversation, and he's a very talented writer. Yeah. He is a very talented writer.
And so everybody can sing, though.
I can't carry a tune. I can sing. That's different.
No. But people who stutter very bad, they can sing. Without stuttering.
Oh, interesting. Is that a fact?
That's a fact.
Oh, I know that.
Yeah.
So why don't they just sing what they want to say? How are you today? It's good to see you. I remember actually Shalom.
Maybe when you were starting Talmud, you put
that's why we put
that.
That's why we have a sing song when we study. I remember Shalom Goodman, who has a tremendous stutter, and he's a writer actually for the Wall Street Journal. He wasn't until recently; he just changed jobs. But at his Shabbat brachas, he was very sweet. He got up and he starts, and it takes him a long time to speak. And he basically, his point was, without imitating how he said it, he said, "I have not yet told my wife about my stutter. Please don't tell her." But it was really funny. It took him 4 minutes to say that. And it was a great way to break the mood in the room, because here's a chassan, and he's getting up to speak, and he can't say a word because it's the worst study I've ever heard. And then he said that joke, and it was like the whole room was like a relief of okay, he broke the ice. She doesn't know yet about this. All right, we'll see you. Oh, let me get the chauffeur quickly. I'll do it in the hallway.
Oh, yeah, the chauffeur.
You heard it already? Okay.